Hello friends, welcome to some Star Citizen news. I got a monthly update for you, all core gameplay, all good stuff. We're talking about med beds changing in functionality, item recovery getting some updates, control surfaces, quantum travel, engineering, all right here. Normally I try to make a video about this on the main channel, but I don't have time. We're going to be out of town next week, so I wanted to try and do a little casual read through with you. I'm still going to give you all the context and like the background and the info and all that jazz. So sit back and relax. It's a little more casual than normal, but it should be good stuff. Starting out, core gameplay in August worked on a lot of bugs actually. Bugs and glitches. The bugs and glitches, the bitches, yes, those. Core gameplay worked on freight elevators, which were a big problem for since they came out, and probably still will remain a problem for a while more, but they're working on it, all right? They're working on it. They're continuing to work on also other widely reported bugs and stuff. Unreliable medical beacons is a big one and needs to get done for the Apollo coming out, but also physics exploits that have been reported. They're checking them out. They're looking into them. We are also seeing improvements to medical ship functionality in progress. This means adding the addition of medical gel. This is going to be required to allow for respawning. It's actually the resources that go into determining whether you can use medical beds or not. They say this is going to further differentiate the utility of the various medical vehicles in the game. Good thing, because they kind of made med beds on the tier 1 level not as valuable over tier 3. I do wonder if lower tier beds will use less medical gel or more than others to try and differentiate that. Ultimately, this is a big change that we've known is coming. This is part of everything relying on resources, and it makes it more of a good thing to have the cargo capacity and the space to store that stuff. We saw it coming up in the sneak peek recently. These little rechargers were clearly meant to be for regen at this point, now we know. And who knows? I'm not going to say how this works. I won't tell you where to shove that syringe, but in some way, this is going to factor into medical gel and its ability to respawn us, and screw that guy in the medical Ursa commercial. Because he lied. Additionally, the devs are working on a new creature with unique behaviors and attack moves. This is probably an actual new creature, not a bigger Valakar. We've seen a couple different pop-up on some concepts and videos, but who knows what this will be. The engineering screen was also updated. It shows the rate of heat change for components and fixed various bugs. This is going to be a big change to the game, causing a lot of gameplay updates to ships in outposts and space stations, mainly larger ships, but it's something we'll all need to pay attention to for a couple other things we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Item recovery. The team added the ability to disable components for ships that have been claimed. Now that's going to be different. That's not the same insurance claim you're thinking of. We'll get to that. Additionally, items will now display a timer until they become bricked after they've been claimed by the original owner. What is bricked, you might ask? We'll get to that. This is also displayed to the player as part of a notification when an item is bricked and a player attempts to use it. This is item recovery. Y'all know it. You have heard of it. It's ended the world for some people over the last few months. Item recovery tier 0 basically removed player-to-player looting for the most part, and that was a problem for a lot of people. But the whole idea behind this change was it was one major change based around the idea of creating item ownership and allowing for items to be recovered without being doubled, duplicated, or getting insurance fraud. So the basis of that was first creating the system in which things can be returned to your body. They did that. That was tier 0. It happens automatically. They're locked there. Tier 1, which is what they're talking about right here with these bricking of items, is the first step towards breaking us away from that non-PvP looting area. Essentially, once an item is looted, it remains usable until the original owner reclaims it or marks it as stolen. At that point, a dead man switch is activated, meaning it will cease to function after a period of time. That was talked about right here by Rich Tyrer last year.
If someone steals your ship, you can mark it as stolen, either via an insurance claim or in your Mobi. This will then trigger a dead man switch on the stolen ship, meaning it will cease to function after a period of time.
Now you might be saying, well, that's crappy. What if I want to use the thing I've looted? That's where tier 2 comes in. The next step. Still a far ways away because it's going to include crafting. That's kind of what it depends on, but it also includes like the restoration process here. It says, once an item is looted, you will have the option to sell it, dismantle it for crafting resources, or restore it with the potential cost of crafting materials and credits to make it your own. So you can steal something that is somebody else's, you can steal it, and you can keep it for yourself. Weapons, ships, items, armor. But you have to go through the process of cleaning it. Go to a fence or do something else that makes it so that it can't be tracked back to you. The other person can still then go and get their stuff because they've claimed it through insurance and it's been repeated, but because there is that potential cost of crafting materials and credits in your process of making it your own, it's not necessarily duplicating the value of the, components and resources that went into building that thing. I don't know if this is a perfect system, but this is what they've laid out that they want to do. And we are currently working on step 2 out of 3 to make that happen. Don't know when it's going to happen. This is the 3rd monthly report. We've heard about item recovery being worked on this year. So they are getting ahead on it. Or not ahead, but they are getting to work on it faster than some people considered they might after they made this announcement in May. And this is a big part of it. The ability to brick the items is obviously a very big and crucial part of Tier 1. The rest of Tier 1 is really just describing how the bricking works. It's no longer usable, but you can still sell the item for credits. Pledge items are auto registers and will never lose their registration status. They can always be claimed back. With Tier 1, you will no longer spawn with your preserved gear already equipped. You will need to visit a location such as a freight elevator to reclaim your registered items. We are developing a quality of life feature to allow you to re-equip your previous full loadout with one auto-equip button. That's also important. I think that will carry over to suit lockers, allowing us to equip our loadouts very quickly, something that becomes more obvious when you look at the new inventory screen. But these are all just details about how bricking and how item registration will work. And that's really what Tier 1 is all about. It's a big step towards a system that actually pays attention to who owns what. I think this gets us a lot closer to proper commodity transfers, player trading, and even player shops. This is all just the basis of that. Glad they're working on it. I hope it's something we can at least see in the EPTU this year, but we'll have to wait until CitizenCon to see what they have planned. Next up is crafting. The team implemented an offline version of the Blueprint service, which is used as a stand-in to support the player-bound Blueprint library until the actual service starts development. Sounds like Tier 0 crafting to me, buddy. They also finished the first playable prototype of crafting in a multiplayer environment. This is great. Crafting is cool. We've heard a lot about it. It is a big part of what they want to do with the game going forward. Things will have their own recipes. You will be able to do certain bits of research or additional crafting upgrades to improve the statistics of items, but they won't really have meaningless improvements. The items will get improved statistics based on the quality of the materials you're using, based on how much of said material you have, if you have a certain type of material, if you do specific research that leads to that part of that item getting better. Lots of things can go wrong here as well, but it is a big system. Good to see it making further progress. After that is control surfaces. Improvements to the aerodynamic simulation were implemented, which should address jittering observed at low frame rates. Support for G-limiter was added to the new atmospheric flight model, and NPCs now fly using control surfaces when in atmosphere. Internally, the team integrated the necessary work from Squadron 42 to conduct an internal playtest with various changes. These in turn prompted additional tuning improvements and bug fixes. So they're kind of going through the cycle on control surfaces. And control surfaces are important. A pretty crucial part of getting this new flight model into the game. This includes quantum travel, quantum boost we'll talk about here in a little bit. It involves engineering. Control surfaces are a big part of it. Heat management, maelstrom and thruster damage, all of that kind of stuff goes into the flight model that hopefully they can drop all in one update and just be like, here is how flight and travel will work in Star Citizen. Please test it, take it, break it, tell us what we need to fix so we can do that and like just go through a process of getting this. Oh, this needs to get figured out. But control surfaces will generally make it so that your ship flies based around its aerodynamic profile. If you got a ship that looks like the Caterpillar, you're going to have to depend more on your thrusters to stay afloat in atmosphere, especially at slower speeds. Got something like a Gladius, you can basically glide. The thing that sets those apart is the Caterpillar is going to receive wear and tear on its thrusters the longer it has to rely on them. whereas the Gladius can use more of its aerodynamics. Now, I don't think this is going to be something that takes you out of the sky, but this is something that you're going to have to pay attention to depending on the ship you have. Makes it more important to have certain types of ships that have VTOL engines. That does include basically any salvage or mining vehicle. Reclaimer, Prospector, Vulture, they've all got VTOL support on their engines, but you're also looking at things like the Raft and the Hercules and the Intrepid, the Spirit C1. A lot of ships have VTOL, and that's not just an aesthetic thing. You will do better in atmosphere once control surfaces come online if you have VTOL engines, and that's just, picking the right ship for the right job. I love that kind of thing. Next up, Maelstrom. IFCS saw further support from Maelstrom. Destroyed parts will now reduce thrust effectiveness, which will also address a common exploit where non-critical ship parts were destroyed to improve acceleration. That is just more part of the same thing. Thrusters will actually depend, or your ship will depend on your thruster layout, how much damage they've taken, how they're performing, how many you actually have, and that will affect your flight. This is all just more in-depth flight model. Cockpit dashboards will now support the ability to physically animate and vibrate based on various factors, adding another level of fidelity and realism. Examples of triggers include spaceships shooting their weapons or maneuvering at high angles of attack. Pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory. For quantum travel, the team worked on various bug fix and polish tasks, such as NPCs not being able to perform solo jumps. Gotta get them on a pogo stick for multiple jumps. I hate myself. Quantum travel is an interesting one. This is one that has been basically untouched for the last couple of years since this CitizenCon, and I'm going to show it here to you in a second. It's really cool. Visually and audibly, it sounds and looks much cooler than it did, but we don't know how much it's changed since then. It also includes Quantum Boost, which is a slower version that can be done in any direction at any time, which is very cool. Thank God we're getting that back. But ultimately, we don't know where this is. I'm guessing and hoping it will come in with that big flight model update I just mentioned. But here's a little look at it anyways.
Locked. You can now go hands off.
So you can see there was a little interactive part of quantum travel now. And so that is what quantum travel looks like, at least as of a couple years ago. I'm hoping all of these things are getting at least some form of in-game treatment and showcase at CitizenCon this year. I think at this point, they need to be showing us these things working in-engine, at the very least with a dev build. No more mock-ups, no more white box, no more gray box. Show what's supposed to be ready, ditch whatever else is not. And maybe that's why it's 2 hours. Who knows? Maybe it'll be very dense. We'll see. They mentioned here that quantum interdiction also saw improvements to address the reliability of the system, especially in situations where new quantum interdiction fields appear or disappear after the initial jump was initiated. Interdicted ships will also now have markers on them to make them more obvious to players who are performing the interdiction. People are generally thinking piracy when it comes to this, but this is going to be big for bounty hunting soon. Turret weapons are now prevented from firing when aimed at the host vehicle. This will reduce the need for complex turret angle maps, which have caused turrets to aim up and down erratically as players rotate them. Yes, I've very much been victim of that one. For radar and scanning, the team worked on various improvements and polished tasks, such as improved UI information about targets and better positioning of the scan information for very large targets. We don't really have too much understanding of what any of the radar and scanning stuff looks like. I do think it is a big part of what people think of as exploration gameplay. The game has stuff that people want to find. People will pay good money for those things being found. Other people want to find those things. The difficulty is just sharing the information. Once they can figure that out, I definitely think exploration makes for a perfectly viable career path in Star Citizen already, and I know there's always all kinds of what exploration kind of replies to this sort of stuff, but I'm sorry guys, just because whatever people are exploring for is not what you think is valuable to explore for doesn't mean that people won't explore for it. Exploration is finding something and reporting it. That's it. Doesn't have to be some crazy game loop with cool missions. I want it to be. I definitely want there to be PvE focused exploration stuff that gets tasked to us through the contract manager that has a story behind it and all that stuff. But that's just not all exploration is. And I think that there is a lot of potential for this kind of stuff, these radar and scanning stuff, to make a big difference when it's coming to industrial gameplay specifically. Now, if you go back to the Held the Line trailer, that's really the only time I've ever seen scan information pop up on a ship, and it's very brief here. Gonna have to find it. Here he is. So this guy has this scanned information showing, basically just shows his name, his ship type, and the ship class. I think the information we get will depend on what kind of scanner we're using maybe, but at the very least, it kind of just gives you an idea of how it might show up in the game, especially in the FPS version. It would be very cool if this showed you like bounty information and what they were worth. Maybe if you have a specific bounty hunting helmet or scanner, you can see specific bounty hunting information. I don't know, but scanning and radar is a big one. Hopefully they talk about it soon. Transport also made good progress towards feature parity with the legacy transit system. This included bringing it at parity with the current behaviors, for instance, hangars, scripting support for design, and also making necessary preparations for dynamic server meshing. A couple things here that I think matter. First is bringing it to parity with the current behaviors, for instance, hangars, is good because that means that they have now rebuilt the system that handles instanced hangars that were highly dependent on people who don't work there anymore. That could mean that changes, updates, and stability for it will be a lot easier to come by if they don't have any sort of tech debt or lost knowledge from those people leaving. And that's good to hear. The other one is dynamic server meshing, something that we have not heard a ton about, but I think is very, very important. If you go back to the June monthly report, you'll see that they were talking about dynamic server meshing needed for instancing here. Steady progress is currently being made towards dynamic server meshing, which is also crucial for the successful implementation of instancing. Something that we've been waiting for the R-Corp locations, something that probably would change the Onyx locations, something that would probably allow them to make other things kind of like contested zones. Pretty important stuff. And dynamic server meshing overall is kind of really close to that end goal for their back end. This is a website made by my friend Unobtainium, and it goes through the whole back-end process that Star Citizen has gone through, from simple bits like the zone system all the way up to the replication layer, with all the information and every source you need to learn about it yourself here. It is a ridiculously helpful website. Now, a lot of people will say, it's nothing special, server meshing, it's just a new name slapped on old tech, all that jazz. I don't need it to be the most amazing thing in the world, but it works. And it's made the game better since 4.0, and that tells me that they're onto something. Now, it's not their end goal. It was just the first step in server meshing, and it got things into a better state, but it didn't do everything that... I'm not saying dynamic server meshing is suddenly the actual answer. But what server meshing did statically was it allowed the game to go from one server running everything to 10 servers running everything. That means now, instead of having 100 players on one server across Microtech, Pyro 4, Hurston, Crusader, Pyro 3, and in the jump point in between, there are now 5 servers taking care of those people. There's a lot less load on the system. That's why AI is running better. That's why stability has gotten better. That's why server crashes less. All of these things have been good, but you still have to set 5 servers to Santin and 5 servers to Pyro. So if, for instance, you have the whole thing set 5 to 5 and 5, and then you see some big dynamic event take place in Stanton that attracts a bunch of people there, you can't see the game dynamically reorient to handle that. That's what dynamic server meshing is. This is meant to be the system that can allow Microtech to split into 5 servers if it needs to, because a bunch of people are going there to try and bust the economy up. Or to eliminate 4 servers from Pyro because it's very dead for a week for God knows why. This allows them to save a lot of money on server costs because they can put the servers where they're needed, but it also allows them to make the game way more optimized, basically supercharging what already happened with static server meshing, allowing for more locations, which we've already seen them adding with static server meshing, but allowing them in different places and in different levels of concentration. That's why things like Starchitect, which I think is a silly name, but is basically their their attempt to make points of interest all across these different planets. That's why it's a little more realistic looking at where the system is going. Now, this is just SC server meshing, sc/server/meshing.info. If you want to visit this website and learn all about it, there's a lot of reading to do here. So I will make that one available too, at least in terms of my recommendation. Finally, the inventory rework is progressing well, with the team implementing proximity looting, which will allow players to loot from nearby inventory containers simultaneously. The new UI has also added filters and search implemented. Oh my god, search is a lifesaver. Search literally changed my life, okay? It made me see the light. I wake up happy and energetic in the morning now. I don't need coffee. I go to sleep a happy man. I can run miles in the morning, all just because search. Oh my gosh. Never implement anything without it again, please, CIG. The inventory that they've shown us, I like it. It looks cluttered, I think, because it shows us a lot of stuff, but I think that's them trying to show us everything at once. The ability to loot from nearby sources, seeing our whole loadout here, getting a representation of my attachments that looks much better than me. We even got like the timers here that they talked about for things like crafting or bricking items. It looks like it's much more fully featured based on the game that we're going to be playing, rather than the one that we were testing like 2 or 3 years ago when 3.15 came out with the current inventory. I still think that the third-person camera is kind of a silly choice for it, just based around the philosophy of the game overall. It's not me hating on your choice. If you like that, that's cool, okay? Not saying you're wrong, just saying it seems like a step away from the rest of the game. Like the looting menu is very clearly keeping you in first person because it's all first person, and then this one takes you to third person. That's what they want to do. Maybe it works best. We shall see. I don't know if this is going to make it into this year. It's not going to be in-game this year. I'm literally just hoping we see a functional version of this from CIG in like even a video in this year. I wasn't thinking when they first showed this concept we'd be seeing this for at least a year. I'm glad they're working on it already, but can't say it sounds like it's coming anytime soon. The last thing, I know I said finally, but the true last thing, is an upcoming event which was given support to improve existing mission archetypes and better support mission availability scaling. I will say this, of all things this year, actual mission support's been pretty nice. In various parts of the game, we've seen missions, whereas it took, I think, 3 years for the previous selection of missions to get brought in, and that was just more FPS missions, really, just derivatives of other stuff. Some of this is like that, but at least it's voice narrated. At least it's behind factions. At least there's like progression to it. I look forward to seeing what they're going to do with the future patches this year in terms of content. I think a lot of this core gameplay needs to be ready to be shown to the public at CitizenCon in working formats this year. I think that's really important to them proving out that they're actually making progress towards this stuff while not like throwing it into the PU and causing instability. And that's where I'll stay on that. I'm going to put out a video about CitizenCon over on the main channel, probably towards the beginning of October, maybe the end of September. Just a little, expectations on my end, but that's about what I have for you in core gameplay. I hope you got a good amount out of this little run through, got some context and eyes on things that maybe you haven't seen before. I usually do this on the main channel. Maybe I'll start doing this on the second channel just like this, real casually, if you guys like it. But if you want to see the whole read through of this entire monthly report, we got ship news, AI news, narrative, all kinds of stuff. If you're watching this right when it came out, then I'm probably live reading through this whole thing with chat. If not yet, then I will be in a few minutes. But that's always a good time. We do it every month. And yeah, welcome to Space Tomato 2, where I cover things on the daily. Hope you got something out of this. Hope you enjoyed it and got your info. And I'll see you all in the next one.
Thank you.